The city lights reflected off the glossy pavement as Clara stood outside Gavriil's apartment, the key card clutched tightly in her trembling hand. Tonight, she had come with hope, a flicker of optimism that perhaps, after months of cold distance, there might be a chance to rekindle the love they once shared. But the stillness in the air carried an unease that Clara couldn't shake. Her heart pounded as she swiped the keycard and pushed the door open. The sound of laughter, intimate and carefree, stopped her in her tracks. She paused, her breath hitching. Peering inside, she saw them. Gavriil was leaning casually against the bar counter, his arm draped around a striking woman with flowing auburn hair, Lola. The scene before her felt surreal, like a twisted nightmare. Lola's melodious laughter filled the room as Gavriil whispered something in her ear. The two were so engrossed in each other, they didn't even notice Clara standing there. Then came the final blow. The sound of shattering glass pierced the air as a bottle of wine fell to the floor. Clara's heart sank when she realized it was the exclusive bottle she had brought back from San Jose, a gift for Gavriil, meant to symbolize a new beginning. A gasp escaped Clara's lips, and her presence was finally acknowledged. Gavriil turned, his expression shifting from amusement to shock. Lola's gaze followed his, her smug demeanor unwavering. "Clara," Gavriil began, his voice uncertain. "I am sorry," Clara stammered, stepping back. "I should have knocked." She turned on her heels, the walls closing in on her as she fled. Outside the apartment, Clara leaned against the corridor wall, her legs threatening to give way. Her chest heaved as tears blurred her vision. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Gavriil wasn't just her husband. He was the man she had once trusted with her heart, and now he had shattered it without a second thought. The taxi ride home was a blur. Clara stared out the window, the city lights streaking past like ghostly trails of her fading hope. Her mind raced with questions. Had Gavriil always been like this? Had she been blind to his indifference, mistaking it for the routine struggles of marriage? By the time she arrived at her modest apartment, the weight of reality crashed down on her. She sank onto the couch, her hands trembling as she clutched the hem of her coat. Images of Gavriil and Lola replayed in her mind like a cruel film reel. For hours, Clara sat in silence, her thoughts a whirlwind of anger, heartbreak, and confusion. She had given everything to their marriage, her love, her support, her dreams. And yet, Gavriil had treated her as if she were disposable. As the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, Clara's sorrow began to morph into resolve. She couldn't let Gavriil's betrayal define her. She had lost herself in their marriage, but now it was time to find her way back. Clara rose from the couch, her eyes glinting with determination. She would confront Gavriil, not for closure, but for herself. She deserved answers, and she deserved to reclaim her dignity. The next day, Clara arrived at Gavriil's office unannounced. The receptionist gave her a hesitant smile, clearly uncomfortable, but Clara walked past her without a word. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, each step bolstered by the fury simmering in her chest. She pushed open the door to Gavriil's office, her heart pounding. He was seated at his desk, reviewing a stack of documents. When he looked up, his expression darkened. "Clara," he said, his tone cold, "what are you doing here?" She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need to talk to you," she said firmly, closing the door behind her. Gavriil leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "I'm busy. Can this wait?" "No, it can't." Clara stepped closer, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I saw you with Lola last night." For a moment, Gavriil looked caught off guard, but he quickly masked it with indifference. And? Clara repeated, incredulous. "That's all you have to say? I walked in on you with another woman, and you act like it's nothing?" Gavriil sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Clara, what I do in my personal time is none of your concern." His words were a slap in the face. Clara's hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. "None of my concern," she echoed, her voice shaking. "I'm your wife, Gavriil. Or have you forgotten that? Gavriil stood, towering over her. Our marriage is a formality, Clara. Let's not pretend it's anything more. The finality in his tone was like a dagger to her heart. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Fine, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. If that's how you feel, then I'll make it easy for you. You won't have to pretend anymore. Without another word, Clara turned and walked out of his office, her heart breaking with each step. But as she stepped into the sunlight outside, a sense of clarity washed over her. She had spent too long fighting for a man who wouldn't fight for her. From that moment on, Clara vowed to fight for herself. The sun cast its golden rays over the city as Clara walked aimlessly through the bustling streets. Despite the lively atmosphere around her, she felt utterly alone. Gavriil's words echoed in her mind like a haunting melody. Our marriage is a formality. Let's not pretend it's anything more. She ended up at a small cafe on a quiet street corner. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, but it did little to comfort her. Clara ordered a cappuccino and sat by the window, staring blankly at the world outside. As she stirred her coffee, her thoughts spiraled. How had her marriage come to this? She had entered it with so much hope, so much love, only to be met with coldness and betrayal. She couldn't remember the last time Gavriil had looked at her with warmth in his eyes or held her hand without hesitation. Clara's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her best friend Layla. Hey Clara, haven't heard from you in days. Let's catch up soon? A lump formed in Clara's throat. She had been so consumed by her marital troubles that she had neglected the people who truly cared about her. Wiping away a stray tear, she typed a quick reply. Let's meet tomorrow. I need to talk. As the evening approached, Clara returned home, her resolve firm. She would face whatever came next with strength. Gavriil might have dismissed their marriage, but she wouldn't let him destroy her spirit. The following day, Clara met Layla at a cozy bistro. Layla was the kind of friend who radiated positivity, her energy contagious even in the darkest times. As soon as she saw Clara, her smile faded. Clara, what's wrong? Layla asked, concern lacing her voice. Clara tried to keep her composure, but as soon as she sat down, the dam broke. She poured out everything: the coldness, the betrayal, the scene with Lola, and Gavriil's cruel words. Layla listened intently, her expression shifting from shock to anger. When Clara finally finished, Layla reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Clara, you deserve so much better than this, Layla said firmly. Gavriil doesn't appreciate you, and honestly, he doesn't deserve you. Why are you holding on to someone who treats you like this? I don't know, Clara admitted, her voice trembling. I guess I keep hoping he'll change, that he'll remember how things used to be. Layla shook her head. You can't make someone change if they don't want to. You've already given him everything, Clara. Maybe it's time to start giving to yourself. Clara mulled over Layla's words as they finished their meal. She realized that for too long, she had prioritized Gavriil's happiness over her own. It was time to shift the focus back to herself. Before parting ways, Layla hugged her tightly. Whatever you decide, Clara, I'm here for you. Don't forget that. Clara felt a surge of gratitude. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel entirely alone. That evening, Clara returned to the apartment with renewed determination. The space felt cold and empty, a reflection of her crumbling marriage. But this time, she didn't let it consume her. She spent hours organizing her belongings, packing away memories of happier times with Gavriil. Each item she boxed up felt like a small step toward reclaiming her independence. By the time she finished, exhaustion weighed on her, but so did a sense of accomplishment. Just as she was about to settle in for the night, there was a knock at the door. Clara's heart raced as she opened it to find Gavriil standing there. His expression was unreadable, but his presence alone sent a wave of emotions crashing over her. What are you doing here? Clara asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Gavriil stepped inside, his gaze sweeping over the packed boxes, his brows furrowed. "What's all this?" "I'm packing," Clara said simply. "I thought it was time to start moving forward." Gavriil's jaw tightened. "So, that's it? You're just going to leave?" "You made it clear that our marriage doesn't mean anything to you," Clara replied, her voice laced with sadness. "Why should I stay where I'm not wanted?" For a moment, Gavriil said nothing, his expression hardening. Then he spoke, his tone sharp. "You're overreacting, Clara. You always do." Anger flared within her. "Overreacting? You're the one who's been distant, who's been unfaithful. I deserve better than this, Gavriil. I deserve better than you." The silence that followed was deafening. Gavriil's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Clara didn't wait for him to respond. She walked past him, her head held high, and closed the door behind her. As she stood alone in the hallway, Clara felt an unfamiliar sensation: freedom. For the first time in years, she was standing up for herself, and it felt exhilarating. Clara woke up the next morning with a mix of emotions: freedom, defiance, and an underlying sadness she couldn't quite shake. Her confrontation with Gavriil the previous night had been a turning point. For the first time, she had stood her ground, demanding the respect she deserved. Still, the memory of his unreadable expression lingered. Did he regret his actions? Did he even care? Clara shook her head as she got ready for the day. She couldn't allow herself to be consumed by thoughts of him. She had an important meeting scheduled with a potential client for her business. Although Clara had let her career take a back seat for Gavriil, she was determined to reclaim her professional identity. Arriving at the cafe where the meeting was to take place, Clara took a deep breath and stepped inside. Her client, a sharp-looking woman named Isabel, greeted her warmly. They discussed plans for a collaboration, and for the first time in a long while, Clara felt a spark of confidence. Just as the meeting wrapped up, Clara caught sight of someone familiar entering the cafe, Gavriil. Her heart sank. He hadn't seen her yet, but the sight of him was enough to stir a whirlwind of emotions. Gavriil wasn't alone. A woman walked in beside him, her laughter echoing as they found a table. Clara recognized her immediately: Lola. The sight of them together felt like a punch to the gut. Clara fought the urge to look away. Instead, she forced herself to remain composed. Isabel, noticing the sudden tension in Clara's demeanor, gave her a curious glance. "Is everything all right?" Isabel asked. "Yes," Clara replied, though her voice betrayed her unease. "Let's finalize the details later. Thank you for your time." Isabel nodded and left, leaving Clara alone at her table. She debated whether to confront Gavriil or leave before he noticed her. But before she could decide, Gavriil's eyes met hers. His expression shifted. Surprise, guilt, and something unreadable flashed across his face. Lola followed his gaze and smirked when she saw Clara. Clara stood, her heart pounding. She couldn't let them see how much this affected her. With a steady resolve, she walked toward their table. "Gavriil," she said, her tone calm but firm, "we need to talk." Lola raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "This should be interesting." "Not here," Gavriil said, standing abruptly. "Let's step outside." Clara nodded and followed him out. The air between them was thick with tension as they stood on the sidewalk. "Why are you here?" Gavriil asked, his voice laced with frustration. "I could ask you the same thing," Clara shot back, "but it doesn't matter. I need to know where we stand, Gavriil. Are we going to keep pretending this marriage is anything more than a sham?" Gavriil ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tightening. "You're the one who's packing your things and walking away. Because you've given me no choice," Clara exclaimed, her voice rising. "You've been distant, unfaithful, and you refuse to take responsibility for any of it. I deserve to be with someone who values me." Gavriil looked away, his silence speaking volumes. Clara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I don't need your pity, Gavriil," she said quietly, "but I won't let you keep stringing me along either." She turned and walked away, leaving Gavriil standing alone on the sidewalk. Later that evening, Clara returned to her apartment. The confrontation with Gavriil had been draining, but it had also been liberating. For the first time, she felt like she was taking control of her life. She decided to call Layla to share what had happened. As always, her friend was a source of comfort and encouragement. "I'm proud of you, Clara," Layla said. "You're finally standing up for yourself. Keep going. Don't let him drag you down." Clara nodded, her resolve strengthening. She spent the rest of the night focusing on her work, pouring her energy into her business. The next morning, she received an unexpected call. It was Isabel, the client she had met the day before. "Clara, I wanted to let you know that I'm impressed with your ideas," Isabel said. "I'd like to move forward with our collaboration." Clara's heart swelled with gratitude. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she was moving in the right direction. But just as she was beginning to find her footing, there was a knock at her door. Clara hesitated before opening it, her breath catching when she saw who it was. Gavriil stood there, his expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" he asked. Clara's heart raced as she stepped aside to let him in. She wasn't sure what he wanted, but she knew one thing. She wouldn't let him take away the strength she had worked so hard to build. Clara stood frozen at her apartment door as Gavriil stepped inside. He looked uncharacteristically disheveled, his usually composed demeanor replaced with an air of unease. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was deafening, a reflection of the distance that had grown in their relationship. "What do you want, Gavriil?" Clara asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was firm, though her heart raced with anticipation. He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I came to talk, to explain." Clara folded her arms across her chest. "Explain? About what? The lies? The distance? Or the woman you were with yesterday?" Gavriil winced at her words, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I deserve that," he admitted, "but it's not what you think." "Then tell me," Clara challenged, her voice unwavering, "because I've had enough of guessing and waiting for answers that never come." He sighed heavily, as though carrying the weight of the world. "Lola, she's someone from my past. A mistake I thought I'd left behind. She showed up out of nowhere, and I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to hurt you, Clara." Clara's eyes narrowed, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Not wanting to hurt me doesn't justify your actions, Gavriil. Avoiding me, shutting me out, it only made things worse. You don't get to play the victim here." "I know," he said quietly, his voice tinged with regret. "I've been a coward. I thought keeping my distance would protect you, but I see now that it only pushed you further away." For a moment, Clara softened. She wanted to believe him, to trust that his intentions were genuine. But the pain he had caused wasn't something she could easily forget. "You say you wanted to protect me," she said, her voice trembling. "But did you ever stop to think about how I felt? How much it hurt to feel like I didn't matter to you?" Gavriil stepped closer, his expression earnest. "You matter to me, Clara, more than you know. I've been an idiot, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But I want to make things right. Please, just give me a chance." Clara searched his eyes, looking for any sign of deception. She saw sincerity, but she also saw fear, the fear of losing her. "I need time," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Time to figure out if I can trust you again." In the days that followed, Clara threw herself into her work. She focused on growing her business, meeting with clients, and building a future she could be proud of. Her success was a welcome distraction from the chaos of her personal life. Gavriil, true to his word, kept his distance. He sent the occasional text or called to check on her, but he didn't push her for answers. For the first time, Clara felt like she was in control. One evening, as she reviewed some documents at her desk, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Isabel. "Clara, I've just sent over the final agreement for our collaboration. Looking forward to working with you." Clara smiled, feeling a surge of pride. Her hard work was paying off, and for once, She felt like she was moving forward. But her peace was short-lived. Later that night, as she prepared for bed, there was a knock at her door. She hesitated before opening it, her heart sinking when she saw who it was. Lola stood on the threshold, her expression smug. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Clara crossed her arms, her gaze cold. "I don't have anything to say to you." "Oh, I think you do," Lola replied, her tone dripping with condescension. "You see, Gavriil might be trying to make amends with you, but don't be fooled. He'll never change." Clara's jaw tightened, but she refused to let Lola see her rattle her. "If you came here to stir up trouble, you're wasting your time. Gavriil's issues are between him and me." Lola smirked. "You're naive if you think he'll ever put you first. Men like him don't change, Clara. They just find new ways to hurt you." Clara held her ground, her voice steady. "You don't know anything about my relationship with Gavriil, and frankly, I don't care what you think. Now, get out." Lola's smirk faltered, and she reluctantly turned to leave. But before she walked out, she glanced over her shoulder and said, "Don't say I didn't warn you." As the door closed behind her, Clara felt a mix of anger and determination. She wouldn't let Lola or anyone else dictate her life. The next morning, Clara decided it was time to take control of her narrative. She reached out to Gavriil, agreeing to meet for lunch at a quiet cafe. When he arrived, he looked nervous but hopeful. Clara wasted no time in addressing the elephant in the room. "Lola came to see me last night," she said bluntly. Gavriil's expression darkened. "What did she say?" "Nothing I haven't already heard," Clara replied. "But it's not about her. It's about us. If we're going to move forward, we need to be honest with each other. No more secrets, Gavriil." He nodded, his gaze steady. "I understand, and I promise, no more secrets." Clara leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "That means telling me everything. About Lola, about why you've been distant, everything. If you can't do that, then there's no point in continuing this." Gavriil took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging. "You're right. You deserve the truth. Lola, she's a part of my past that I'm not proud of. We were involved years ago, and it ended badly. When she showed up again, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to hurt you, but I see now that my actions did just that." Clara listened, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she said, "I appreciate your honesty, Gavriil, but actions speak louder than words. If you want to rebuild this relationship, you need to prove to me that you're willing to change." "I will," he said, his voice firm. "Whatever it takes, Clara. I'm not giving up on us." For the first time in weeks, Clara felt a glimmer of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but perhaps there was a chance for them to find their way back to each other. Clara walked into her apartment that evening, her mind swirling with everything Gavriil had told her earlier. His confession had opened a door she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through. She wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered like a shadow she couldn't escape. The night was quiet, save for the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. Clara poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window, staring at the city lights. She was lost in thought when her phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Isabel. "Clara, I heard something about Gavriil that might interest you. Can we talk?" Her heart sank. Another revelation? Clara hesitated, debating whether to respond. But curiosity got the better of her, and she replied, agreeing to meet Isabel the next day. The next morning, Isabel greeted Clara with a concerned expression as they sat at a small cafe. After exchanging pleasantries, Isabel leaned forward. "Clara, I don't mean to intrude, but I heard about Gavriil's connection to Lola," Isabel began carefully. "It seems she's been talking to people, claiming she still has a hold on him." Clara's stomach turned. What exactly is she saying? "She's implying that Gavriil isn't as committed to you as he claims, that their history is far from over," Isabel said hesitantly. Clara clenched her fists under the table. "I don't believe her," she said, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. Isabel reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Clara's. I just thought you should know. You deserve the truth, whatever it may be." Later that evening, Clara sat in her apartment, waiting for Gavriil to arrive. She had texted him, asking to talk. When he walked through the door, she wasted no time. "Isabel told me about Lola's rumors," Clara said, her tone sharp. Gavriil froze, his expression shifting from confusion to frustration. "What rumors?" "She's telling people that your history with her isn't over," Clara said, crossing her arms, "that she still has a hold on you." Gavriil let out a heavy sigh, rubbing his temples. "Of course she is. Lola thrives on drama. She's trying to cause a rift between us because she can't stand to see me happy." "Then why hasn't she moved on? Why does she think she still has power over you?" Clara demanded, her voice rising. "Because I was weak once," Gavriil admitted. "I let her manipulate me in the past, and she thinks she can still do it. But I'm not that man anymore, Clara. I've changed." Clara searched his face, looking for any sign of deceit. "If you've really changed, then prove it. Cut her out of your life completely. No more excuses, Gavriil." He nodded, his expression resolute. "You're right. I'll take care of it." True to his word, Gavriil confronted Lola the next day. He met her at a neutral location, determined to put an end to her meddling once and for all. "Lola, this has to stop," Gavriil said firmly as they sat across from each other at a cafe. She smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Stop what? Telling the truth?" "You and I are over," Gavriil said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Whatever you're trying to achieve by spreading these rumors, it won't work. I'm with Clara, and nothing you say or do will change that." Lola's expression faltered for a moment before she recovered. "You think you can just walk away from me? After everything we've been through?" "Yes," Gavriil said without hesitation, "because I've realized that you're toxic, Lola, and I won't let you ruin my life or Clara's." Lola's eyes flashed with anger, but Gavriil stood his ground. After a tense silence, she finally stood, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret this," she said coldly before walking away. Later that evening, Gavriil returned to Clara's apartment, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He told her everything about his meeting with Lola, sparing no detail. "I'm done with her, Clara," Gavriil said, taking her hands in his. "She's out of my life for good. All I want now is to focus on us." Clara looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of doubt. She saw none. For the first time in a long while, she felt like they were on the same page. "I want that too," Clara said softly, "but it's going to take time, Gavriil. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight." "I know," he said, his voice steady, "and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As they sat together in the quiet of the apartment, Clara felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a foundation they could build on, one step at a time. Clara decided to take a short trip to clear her mind. She needed time to think about everything: her marriage, Gavriil's commitment, and the drama Lola had stirred up. She packed her bags and headed to a quiet seaside town where she could relax and reflect. The salty breeze and the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore brought a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. She spent the first day exploring the quaint streets, visiting local shops, and sipping coffee at a charming cafe. On the second evening, while Clara walked along the beach, lost in thought, she spotted a familiar figure in the distance. As the person approached, her heart sank. It was none other than Daniel, her ex-boyfriend from years ago. "Clara?" Daniel called out, his voice filled with surprise. "Daniel?" she replied, her tone hesitant. He smiled, stopping a few feet away. "I can't believe it's you. It's been years." Clara nodded, her heart pounding. "Yeah, it has. What are you doing here?" "I've been living here for a while," Daniel explained. "Needed a fresh start after everything." They talked for a while, catching up on each other's lives. Daniel seemed genuinely happy to see her, and Clara couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. As they parted ways, Daniel gave her a lingering look. "If you ever want to talk or catch up more, "You know where to find me," he said before walking away. Clara returned to her hotel room that night, her mind racing. Seeing Daniel again had stirred up feelings she thought she had buried long ago. She couldn't deny that a part of her still wondered what might have been if things had worked out differently between them. But she quickly reminded herself that she was married to Gavriil. Despite their issues, she had chosen him, and she owed it to their marriage to make it work. The next day, Clara spent her time trying to distract herself, reading, swimming, and exploring more of the town. But no matter what she did, her thoughts kept drifting back to Daniel. That evening, she found herself walking past the cafe where Daniel had said he often spent time. Sure enough, he was there, sitting at an outdoor table with a cup of coffee and a book. "Clara," he said, smiling warmly when he saw her. "Care to join me?" She hesitated for a moment before nodding. Sure, why not? They talked for hours, reminiscing about old times and sharing stories about their lives. Clara found herself laughing and smiling in a way she hadn't in months. But as the evening wore on, she felt a pang of guilt. "I should go," she said suddenly, standing up. Daniel looked surprised but didn't push. "Of course. It was really good to see you, Clara." As Clara walked back to her hotel, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was treading dangerous territory. When Clara returned home a few days later, Gavriil was waiting for her. He seemed relieved to see her, but also anxious. "How was your trip?" he asked, pulling her into a hug. "It was good," Clara replied, her voice tight. Gavriil noticed her hesitation. "Is everything okay?" Clara hesitated, then decided to be honest. "I ran into someone from my past while I was away. Daniel." Gavriil's expression darkened. "Daniel? As in your ex?" "Yes," Clara admitted. "We talked a bit, but it was nothing more than that. I thought you should know." Gavriil's jaw tightened. "I don't like the idea of you spending time with him, Clara." "I didn't plan it, Gavriil. It just happened," she said, her frustration evident. "But you could have walked away," he countered. Clara sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I was curious, okay? Seeing him again brought up memories, but it also made me realize something. I don't want to live in the past. I want to focus on us, Gavriil. But we need to work on our relationship. We can't keep ignoring the cracks." Gavriil took a deep breath, his expression softening. "You're right. I've been so caught up in my own guilt and insecurities that I haven't been the husband you deserve." They sat down together, talking late into the night about their fears, hopes, and what they needed from each other. For the first time in a long while, Clara felt like they were truly communicating. As they lay in bed that night, Clara felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to fight for their marriage, and she believed Gavriil was too. Clara and Gavriil's relationship slowly began to mend, but they knew they had a long way to go. Gavriil, still haunted by his insecurities and guilt, made a point to spend more time with Clara. However, the peace between them was fragile, and tension lingered beneath the surface. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Gavriil hesitated before speaking. "Clara," he began, his voice hesitant, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you." Clara looked up, sensing the weight of his words. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "Before we got married, there was someone else in my life. Her name was Anna. It wasn't serious, but I thought you should know. She reached out to me recently, and I didn't know how to tell you." Clara froze, her mind racing. "What do you mean she reached out?" "She sent me a message, saying she wanted to meet and talk," Gavriil admitted, avoiding her gaze. Clara felt a pang of anger and betrayal but pushed it down. "And did you meet her?" "No," Gavriil said quickly. "I ignored her messages because I didn't want to jeopardize what we have, but I felt guilty for not telling you sooner." Clara studied his face, searching for the truth. "Why now? Why tell me this now?" "Because I'm tired of hiding things," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I want us to start fresh, and that means being honest about everything, even the things that might hurt." Clara nodded slowly, her emotions swirling. Thank you for telling me. But honesty works both ways, Gavriil. If Anna contacts you again, I expect you to tell me immediately. I promise, he said, taking her hand. The following week, Gavriil was called away for a business trip, leaving Clara alone at home. She used the time to focus on herself, pouring her energy into work and her hobbies. But despite her efforts, thoughts of Gavriil's confession lingered in her mind. One afternoon, as she was tending to the garden, the doorbell rang. Clara opened the door and froze. Standing there was a woman she didn't recognize but instinctively knew Anna. "Hello," the woman said, her tone polite but with an edge. "You must be Clara." Clara's heart raced, but she composed herself. "Yes, and you are?" "I'm Anna," the woman said, her smile faint. "I thought it was time we met." Clara stepped aside, allowing Anna to enter. They sat in the living room, an unspoken tension hanging in the air. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Anna began. "I just wanted to make sure Gavriil is happy. We had something once, but I've moved on. Still, I needed closure, and I thought meeting you might help." Clara frowned. "Closure? Why now?" Anna hesitated before answering. "Because I didn't realize how much seeing Gavriil's life with you would affect me. But after today, I think I can finally let go." Clara remained calm but firm. "Gavriil and I are working on our marriage. Whatever you had is in the past. I'd appreciate it if you stayed out of our lives moving forward." Anna nodded, standing up. "I understand. Thank you for your time, Clara." As Anna left, Clara felt a mix of emotions: relief, anger, and a newfound determination to protect her marriage. When Gavriil returned from his trip, Clara immediately told him about Anna's visit. "She came to the house?" Gavriil asked, his face darkening. "Yes," Clara said. "She claimed she just wanted closure, but I made it clear she's not welcome in our lives anymore." Gavriil reached for her hand. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I'll make sure she doesn't bother us again." Clara nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She realized that while Anna's presence had been unsettling, it had also forced her to confront her own feelings about Gavriil. She loved him, but she needed more than promises. She needed action. That evening, as they sat together on the couch, Clara took Gavriil's hand. "We need to rebuild our foundation," she said. "No more secrets, no more lies. If we're going to make this work, we have to be fully committed to each other." Gavriil nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "I want that too. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." They spent hours talking, laying bare their fears, hopes, and dreams. By the time they went to bed, Clara felt a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in months. As she lay in Gavriil's arms, she whispered, "We're stronger than this. We'll get through it together." Gavriil kissed her forehead, his voice soft but resolute. "We will." Clara woke up feeling a newfound sense of hope, but the calm was shattered when she received a mysterious envelope addressed to her. Sitting at the kitchen table, she hesitated before opening it, her hands trembling slightly. Inside were photos of Gavriil and Anna together. Some were old, but a few appeared recent, showing them talking at what seemed to be a cafe. Her heart sank. Had Gavriil lied to her? Was Anna still trying to interfere in their lives? Clara's mind raced as she examined the pictures. The timestamps on the recent ones coincided with Gavriil's recent business trip. Her chest tightened as anger and betrayal surged. Within her, she needed answers. When Gavriil returned home that evening, Clara confronted him, holding the photos up. "Care to explain these?" Gavriil's face paled as he took the photos from her. "Where did you get these?" "Does it matter?" Clara snapped. "What matters is whether or not they're real. Were you with her during your trip?" Gavriil sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't meet her intentionally. She showed up at one of my meetings uninvited. We spoke briefly, and I made it clear that I wanted nothing to do with her." Clara's eyes narrowed. "And you didn't think to tell me this? After everything we've been through?" "I didn't want to upset you," Gavriil said, his voice filled with regret. "I thought it was a one-time encounter and that it wasn't worth mentioning." You should have told me, Clara said, her voice trembling. Honesty, Gavriil. That's what we agreed on. I'm sorry, he said, stepping closer to her. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please believe me when I say that Anna means nothing to me. Clara took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. I want to believe you, Gavriil, but you need to prove to me that I can trust you again. The confrontation with Gavriil left Clara feeling drained but determined. She decided it was time to take control of her life and her marriage. She reached out to a private investigator to learn more about who had sent the photos and whether Anna was truly out of their lives. A week later, the investigator called with an update. Mrs. Gavriil, the photos were sent anonymously from a local address. We traced the source, and it appears to be someone connected to Anna. She's been trying to stir up trouble between you and your husband. Clara clenched her fists, anger bubbling within her. Thank you for your work. Please keep me updated if anything new comes up. That evening, she shared the findings with Gavriil. Anna is behind this, she said, handing him the investigator's report. She's trying to sabotage us. Gavriil's jaw tightened as he read the report. I'll handle this, Clara. She's crossed a line. No, Clara said firmly. We'll handle this together. I'm not going to let her or anyone else dictate our lives. They devised a plan to confront Anna directly and put an end to her interference once and for all. Gavriil reached out to Anna, arranging a meeting in a public place with Clara by his side. When Anna arrived, she was visibly surprised to see Clara. I didn't expect you to be here, she said, her tone cool. You've caused enough trouble, Clara said, her voice steady. Whatever you're trying to accomplish, it ends now. Anna smirked. I don't know what you're talking about. Gavriil stepped forward. We know about the photos, Anna. Stop playing games. This is your last warning. Stay out of our lives. Anna's expression faltered, but she quickly recovered. Fine. I'll back off. But don't think this is over. Clara met her gaze, unflinching. It is over. You won't get another chance to interfere. As Anna left, Clara felt a sense of empowerment. She and Gavriil had faced the challenge together, and it had strengthened their bond. With Anna out of the picture, Clara and Gavriil focused on rebuilding their relationship. They began attending couples therapy, where they learned to communicate more effectively and address their lingering insecurities. One evening, Gavriil surprised Clara with a romantic dinner at home. The dining table was adorned with candles and roses, and soft music played in the background. What's all this? Clara asked, her eyes widening in surprise. I wanted to remind you how much you mean to me, Gavriil said, pulling out a chair for her. As they ate, they talked about their dreams and plans for the future. Gavriil reached across the table, taking Clara's hand in his. I know I've made mistakes, he said, but I'm committed to being a better husband and partner. You're my everything, Clara. Tears filled Clara's eyes as she squeezed his hand. And you're mine, Gavriil. I believe in us. Later that night, as they danced in the living room, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. They were far from perfect, but they were stronger together. For the first time in months, she felt hopeful about their future. Clara and Gavriil's relationship was slowly healing, but the scars of the past still lingered. Despite the progress they had made, there was always a nagging doubt in the back of Clara's mind. Could she truly trust him again? Could she ever forget the betrayal she felt when Anna's photos surfaced? As they walked hand in hand through the park one crisp evening, the warmth of Gavriil's touch brought a sense of comfort she hadn't realized she missed. The air was filled with the scent of fresh flowers, and the laughter of children echoed in the background. It was a simple moment, but it felt significant, like they were finally moving forward. I've been thinking, Gavriil began, breaking the silence between them, about us, about what happened. I want to make it up to you. Clara looked up at him, searching his face for sincerity. How? I know I've hurt you. I've been selfish and I should have put you first, but I promise I will always choose you. From now on, it's only us. Clara smiled softly, feeling the sincerity in his words. It wasn't easy to forgive him, but hearing him speak from the heart made her believe in the possibility of a new beginning. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think we both need to work on rebuilding the trust between us." "We will," Gavriil promised, pulling her into an embrace. Together. As weeks passed, Clara and Gavriil continued their journey of rebuilding their marriage. There were still moments of doubt, but each time they faced a challenge, they became stronger together. Therapy sessions helped them communicate more openly, and the distance they had once felt was now replaced with an intimacy they hadn't experienced in a long time. However, the lingering presence of their past mistakes was never too far. One evening, as Clara went through some old family photos, she came across a picture of her and Gavriil during their early days together. The smile on his face in the photo reminded her of the man she had fallen in love with, the man she had trusted implicitly. But then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. "I know what you're doing. Don't think you can escape the past so easily." Her heart skipped a beat. She knew that the past wasn't truly gone. She'd been so focused on healing that she had allowed herself to forget that shadows still lingered. Taking a deep breath, Clara composed herself and sent a response. "You're wasting your time. We've moved on." She set the phone down and looked at the picture of her and Gavriil. She wanted to believe that they were truly past everything, but she couldn't ignore the knot in her stomach. Days turned into weeks, and Clara tried to push the anonymous message out of her mind. But the unsettling feeling never left her. She couldn't shake the sense that something was lurking just out of sight, waiting to disrupt the fragile peace they had built. One night, after dinner, Gavriil surprised Clara with a small trip to the beach. They had always enjoyed the peaceful moments they shared near the water, and Clara was eager to reconnect with him away from the distractions of everyday life. As they sat on the sand, watching the sunset, Clara felt a weight on her chest. "Gavriil," she said, her voice trembling, "I've been receiving strange messages. Someone is watching us." He turned to her, concern written on his face. "What kind of messages?" "They're threatening, Gavriil," Clara said, her voice growing softer. "They're saying things like, 'I know what you're doing, and you can't escape the past.' I don't know who it is, but it feels like someone is out to ruin what we've built." Gavriil's hand tightened around hers. "You should have told me sooner." "I didn't want to worry you," Clara admitted, "but now I can't ignore it anymore. It feels like we're not safe." Gavriil's jaw clenched as he stood up, pacing for a moment. "I won't let anyone destroy us, Clara. I'll find out who's behind this, and I'll make them regret it." Clara stood up, reaching for his arm. "I'm scared, Gavriil. What if this is all part of something bigger? What if the past is coming back to haunt us?" Gavriil turned to face her, his eyes filled with determination. "No one will take you from me. No one will come between us again." Gavriil took immediate action to track down the source of the anonymous messages. He worked tirelessly, hiring security experts and private investigators to dig into every lead. He refused to let the shadows of the past take hold of their future. It wasn't long before they found out who was behind the messages. An old business associate of Gavriil's, someone he had once trusted but had betrayed him in the past. The associate had a personal vendetta against Gavriil and was trying to destroy his life by bringing up old wounds. One evening, Gavriil confronted the man face to face. Clara stood by his side, unwavering in her support. The man's smug expression faltered as Gavriil stepped forward. "You think you can destroy us with your petty games?" Gavriil's voice was calm, but there was a cold fury beneath it. The man chuckled, though his eyes darted nervously. "You've been hiding behind your wealth, your power. But everything comes to an end eventually." Clara stepped forward, her voice steady. "You won't win. We've already won. You're the one who's lost." With a final glare, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. For the first time in what felt like forever, Clara and Gavriil stood in silence, the weight of the past finally lifting from their shoulders. "Are you okay?" Gavriil asked, his voice soft as he turned to her. Clara nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in months. "I'm okay. We're okay." And as they stood together, facing the future, they knew that they had overcome the darkness of their past. Together, they would face whatever came next. Their love, once tested, was now stronger than ever. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more delightful stories.